Hello, everyone. This is Megan Norris from REL Midwest, and we are going to start promptly. There are going to be some more people that join us, but we want to make sure that we are sticking to our time frame here for today's webinar. We are going to talk today about equipping parents to support kindergarten readiness, and we are so thrilled to have you all with us today. We also have an excellent panel of presenters for you today. They'll be talking in succession and then have a question and answer session at the end. Our first presenter is going to be Dr. Kimberly Mann, and Kimberly Mann currently serves as the product director for the Illinois Birth of Three Title IV waiver and the Safe Babies Court team, among other things. Her practice, program development, and research interests include clinical practice with children and their families and the impact of trauma in the lives of youth. And then following Dr. Mann is going to be Dr. Spring Dawson-McClure from New York University. She is an assistant professor of population health in the Center for Early Childhood Health and Development at NYU School of Medicine. Her research focuses on the development, evaluation, and dissemination of preventative interventions for children living in poverty. And her clinical expertise is in the prevention and treatment of behavior problems, parenting, divorce and remarriage, and early childhood development, including sleeping and eating habits. And then we're going to wrap up the presentations with Valerie Young. Valerie Young is a parent ambassador with the Illinois Head Start Association. And to brag on her for a minute, Valerie was chosen in 2015 as the Region 5 Parent of the Year and the Illinois Head Start Parent of the Year. And then in 2016, she was the National Head Start Association Parent of the Year. So she'll be giving some on-the-ground introductions about parent engagement for early childhood. And then finally, my picture is on there. I'm Megan Norris. I'm one of the partnership facilitators for the Midwest Early Childhood Research Alliance, who hosts this webinar, and we will talk a little bit about what that is and what that means in a moment. So the agenda for today, each of the presenters that I just introduced you to are going to talk about a different topic. Kimberly Mann will be talking about trauma-informed care and social-emotional development. And then Dr. Dawson-McClure will be talking about research on parenting and kindergarten readiness. And then we'll flip to Valerie Young, who will talk about parent engagement strategies to support kindergarten readiness. And then you all will get to engage with them in a question and answer session at the end. So make sure that you stick around and put your questions in the chat box. So Cora earlier invited everybody to click on the chat icon that's at the bottom of the screen, and that's where you can enter questions that we'll be compiling throughout the webinar and we'll pose to the panelists, either an individual or to the entire panel at the end. So the Regional Education Laboratory, or REL Midwest, that I've been referring to, is a network of 10 different regional education laboratories funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences. The REL works in collaboration with different education entities, including school districts, state education agencies, and other organizations in Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. The type of work that the REL does is, we like to refer to it as a couple of different buckets. The first bucket is applied research. So that's sort of the bigger research projects, technical assistance, and then engagement activities such as this. So this is one of the activities that the Early Childhood Alliance is putting on, and the real aim and goal of this is to make sure that we're bridging the research that's being done and the research landscape on early childhood education, and we're marrying it with practice. So you can have examples from folks in the field, which all of our presenters are, that are going to give real-life application to what's being studied. And then why we do this work is to make sure to try to help to solve practical problems and advance fundamental understanding of education challenges and processes, right? So we never have a shortage of questions, and so the REL is really trying to make sure that the research is actually being used and give an example of how it can be applied in the day-to-day lives in the field. How the REL does this work is in consultation with state education agencies. So we like to really say that the partnerships are driving the work. The connection that the researchers on the REL Midwest team have with practitioners is really the vehicle for everything that gets done. And those partnerships are sort of structured in 5 different ones right now in this sort of wave of what the Regional Education Laboratory looks like. I've mentioned a couple of times the Early Childhood Research Alliance, which is what this webinar is hosted by and focused on. And it's the official full name is the Midwest Early Childhood Education Research Alliance, and we affectionately refer to it as ERA. There are 4 other partnerships, one of which is a network improvement community, and then there's 3 other alliances, and we sort of create emergent partnerships as we go, as well as need arises. So with that brief introduction, I would like to pass over to the very able hands of Dr. Kimberly Mann.
Hi there, and I am having technical difficulties now. Pretty severe ones, actually. I've completely lost my connectivity, and I'm wondering if we can flip our presentation so that I can hopefully get back in order.
Yes, ma'am, sounds good. No, it's no problem at all. So we're going to actually pass along to, and we'll advance to Dr. Spring Dawson-McClure.
And I'll work on my situation.
That sounds great. Thank you.
My apologies.
No problem.
Hi, everyone. Running up the stairs to get water and a cough drop. I thought I had a few minutes, so I'll catch my breath as I get started here. So happy to be with you today. I am a mother of 2 young children, and I come from a family of teachers. I am also a part of a team at NYU that includes researchers, psychologists, social workers, and educators. I'm going to start with some key takeaways from the science of early childhood about adversity, school readiness, and parenting. And then I'll talk about family engagement as an opportunity. I'm going to spend a bit of time on how we define family engagement and parent involvement and why definitions matter. And finally, I will share how my colleagues and I are translating this science into solutions for children and families, including a family-centered enhancement to pre-K that we've developed and have been testing in partnership with families and educators in the New York City Department of Education for the past 15 years. Focusing first on the right side, on that rainbow-colored pie, these are the domains of child development. Supporting each domain is what's meant by a whole child approach. And it's now widely accepted that school readiness means all of these things. The social, emotional, and behavioral regulation skills are sometimes called non-academic or non-cognitive skills. We call them foundational skills. These skills are foundational for learning, for success in school, for health and well-being throughout life. And as you may know, the science of early childhood is based on strong evidence from many different fields, education, psychology, economics, neuroscience, that experiencing these kinds of challenges, the adversity shown here, especially in early childhood, can profoundly affect children's development in every domain. Adversity affects us by literally getting under our skin and in the brain through our body's physiological stress response. This is especially true for young children whose brains are rapidly developing, when the capacity to regulate attention, feelings, and behavior is just emerging. But nurturing interactions with parents, teachers, and other caregivers in safe and predictable environments buffer children from the impact of that stress, quite literally helping children calm down, regulate their bodies, return to baseline after a stressful experience, time and again. Children who are at the greatest risk for poorest outcomes in learning, behavior, and health are the ones who experience a pileup, one adverse experience after another. The burden becomes more than any child could be expected to overcome. And the skills that you need to deal with adversity are executive functioning and self-regulation, focusing on attention, planning, delaying gratification, being able to solve problems, work in teams, recognize and manage your feelings. The problem is that adversity can make it very difficult for children to consolidate these emerging skills, in part by taking away opportunities for children to practice. Learning simply cannot happen after stress reaches a certain level. When children have difficulty regulating Parenting and teaching are also much more difficult, and children often end up missing even more opportunities to practice and learn these skills. But when children are in the context of nurturing interactions with caregivers in safe and predictable environments, these skills do develop. This figure is another way of visualizing the same thing. There's a clear pathway through the middle of the figure from adversity to children's developing capacity to self-regulate. And the quality of caregiving clearly matters. Of course, there's also a direct path from adversity to caregiving. Living in poverty makes parenting harder, and it's already plenty hard. Based on the compelling evidence for each of these pathways, scientists and economists advocate for investing to alleviate the burden of adversity early in children's lives. The orange arrow is where we focus our interventions. Based on this science of early childhood, and with careful listening to understand the challenges of raising and educating children in low-income neighborhoods, our purpose is to support parents and teachers in promoting children's self-regulation in spite of what may be happening around them, to build adult capacity to protect children from the onslaught of adversity instead of giving information or advice. So we think of family engagement as an opportunity to connect with families, to lend some support to parents in the awesome and daunting responsibility of raising children. When we talk about family engagement, we're referring simply to efforts by teachers and administrators to engage families. This means building strong relationships based on mutual respect and trust, connections with and among families and community, promoting two-way communication between program staff and families in a culturally and linguistically responsive manner, and strengthening families' capacity to support their children's learning. Skipping around on me just a little bit there. We define parent involvement as the flip side, the many, many ways that parents support children's learning and development. Often, as researchers and practitioners, we focus on involvement inside the school building and participation in activities that are explicitly related to academic learning. Do parents show up at school events? Are parents initiating and maintaining contact about children's progress? Are parents responding to notes and materials sent home? Sorry about that. Taking a broader view of what it means to be ready for school, it's clear that there are many ways that parents are involved in supporting children's development and learning at home, enjoying books together, setting high expectations for success in school, and providing opportunities for learning out in the community. This also means promoting health and development by meeting basic needs for sleep, and good food, clothing, and shelter, promoting social and emotional behavioral regulation skills by creating safe, nurturing, and predictable environments. This is, of course, parenting. And there's a strong research base that both home and school-based involvement make important contributions to children's development and learning. Together, both types of involvement promote academic achievement and better outcomes as kids move up in school. Early involvement sets the foundation for sustained involvement and children's success. Research also shows that there are two types of factors that influence family engagement: past experiences on the left side and current experiences on the right side. You're probably noticing that the weight is on the left side. Before families enter schools for the first time, many factors are already at play that influence their level of involvement and how they may respond to teachers' engagement efforts. These pre-existing factors include economic struggles, negative experiences related to race, ethnicity, and immigrant status, families' own educational experiences at school, and beliefs and knowledge about child development and what it means for a parent versus a teacher to take the lead in children's education. All of this is shaped by cultural beliefs and values. In professional development sessions with teachers and pre-K leaders, we acknowledge that there's often very little that we can do to change the left side of the scale and shift the focus to the right side where we do have some influence. We can change families' current experiences when they walk into the school and the classroom. I want to say a bit more about how we consider race and culture with respect to family engagement, recognizing that race is present on both the left and the right sides of the scale. In terms of past and ongoing experiences of discrimination outside the school building and the ways in which this may affect relationships and interactions between families and educators. Fewer than 20% of teachers in the United States are racial and ethnic minorities, and the student population is now majority minority. This means that most teachers are not familiar with the community norms of their students. Negative stereotypes of low-income parents and parents of color are persistent in our society, in our research offices, and in our school buildings. The opportunities for listening and connecting, sharing different perspectives are quite limited. There's typically very little time during preschool orientations or parent-teacher conferences for building relationships. Given these systemic challenges and the intensity surrounding race and racism in our society, we join others in advocating for researchers and practitioners to engage in deep work to increase racial consciousness. For me, as a white researcher, this has meant being able to talk about race and figuring out how to think about where race shows up in my research and ongoing work with families and educators. This can include reflecting on and addressing implicit biases that shape our assumptions of parent uninvolvement and expectations of child underperformance. One practice is to challenge our assumptions by seeking out counter-narratives, perspectives from parents and marginalized groups. This is a quote from a qualitative study which invited parents to write letters to their children's teachers. Importantly, parents chose if they would actually share the letters afterwards or not. Don't assume that low income means low intelligence or low caring. I raise my children to the best of my ability. I am a hardworking Black female. I don't sell drugs or walk the streets. Please don't put me in a box. I am well educated. Okay, now I'm going to shift to a whirlwind tour of some of the ways in which we're translating this science into solutions for children and families. I'll start by talking about Parent Core. Parent Core is a family-centered intervention that places culture at the center. Our goal is to reduce racial and ethnic and socioeconomic disparities in children's health and development. There are multiple components to Parent Core to make it strong enough to mitigate the impact of adversity. It's a universal enhancement to pre-K to maximize reach and acceptability. It's embedded in schools and community-based centers and facilitated by school staff. It's timed with the transition to school so that parents are especially open and motivated to help children do well. And it's group-based, building social capital and creating a core of parents. Parent Core includes 3 components for educators, families, and students. The program for families is 14 weeks, 2 hours a week, scheduled flexibly based on families' availability, and it's facilitated by a social worker or guidance counselor who works in that building or in the district. You can just glance quickly to get a sense of the topics. These are evidence-based parenting practices to support social, emotional, and behavioral regulation skills. And you can see on the right some of the tools and materials that families get throughout the course of the program to help try out new practices at home. This is a glimpse of some of our parent outreach materials to give a spirit of the idea of really creating a unique opportunity for families to come together, to share ideas and learn from each other. The Parent Core program for pre-K students is also 14 weeks. It's about an hour a week in the classroom. It includes a variety of components, including free play, exercise, the use of self-regulation strategies, and social-emotional learning lessons and activities. These are a few examples of what the kids are learning. And this Parent Core theory of change is, at a glance, what we're trying to accomplish here. The intervention components are shown in blue and purple. Those components together aim to help parents and teachers create safe, nurturing, and predictable environments at home and at school, and to support strong relationships and communication with families, which ultimately leads to improved child outcomes in the orange box with self-regulation and academic skills, and also ultimately mental health and academic achievement. The dotted arrows in the middle illustrate the synergy between the intervention components. For example, parents who feel welcome in the school building are probably more likely to come to the Parent Core program in the first place. And parents who have positive experiences in the program may be more likely to speak up and engage in children's schooling in a variety of other ways, like expressing concerns to teachers, sharing when circumstances at home may affect children's performance at school, responding openly to suggestions from teachers. Okay, I would talk a bit more about the evidence base if I had time. The program has been evaluated in 2 randomized controlled trials in New York City, and it works as intended with impact on all of these domains. We've followed kids up to second grade at this point and have studies ongoing to follow progress into middle school. And these last few slides, I'll just click through quickly to show that we are going to scale now in New York City in partnership with the Department of Education, both in terms of the parent core intervention and also distilling evidence-based practices and tools. We've had the opportunity in that context to think about the New York City version of the Great Schools Framework, which comes from work in Chicago, and defining explicitly that high quality pre-K includes family engagement, as I described above. And then we've been creating these tools that have gone out to every family in New York City and every pre-K program to really start to create a shared language for how families and teachers might talk about these important emerging social and emotional skills. Thanks so much. I am not sure if I'm passing back to Dr. Mann or to Valerie.
Thank you, Spring. It actually will be Dr. Mann next. So we will make sure we fix the slides. And Dr. Mann, so glad you can join us again. Oh, and Dr. Mann, I think you're muted, so I can see your lips move, but I have. Dr. Mann, unfortunately, we still can't hear you. It looks like maybe your phone is muted. Give me 1 second.
My phone's not muted. Can you hear me?
There we go. Perfect. Yep.
Okay. I am having more difficulties. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So thanks again to Spring for being willing to pinch hit like that. And in a way, I think it was really good to have her talk through really laying a good foundation around a program, as well as some of the issues that come up around social emotional learning. I was asked to really talk about some issues related to collaboration. And I can just make sure my, do I have the control? There we go. It really, for me, my conversation is going to come from, I'm going to date this back to around 2007. I was moving between systems, and I think that's going to be my focus. I have sort of lived between different large systems. From school social work here in Illinois, we have a very large school social work association, which I'm clear is not the case in many of our states. And I was actually preparing to teach a group of school social work students. And one of the topics, of course, was social emotional learning. And in another area of my life, I was also working, as I do currently, around child welfare and supporting trauma-informed care for populations of children who have been exposed to early adversity and trauma. And so it really became clear to me in preparing students to think about those issues that there is a common nexus, perhaps, that we could capitalize on if we knew what each other were doing. And so that's really going to be my focus in this conversation for this brief time. All right, so we know in social and emotional learning, and particularly when we're talking just our normal development, we hear folks in pre-K, folks in kindergarten, and hopefully parents at home telling us to learn to use our words. Some of us know adults who are still struggling around those areas. Clearly, as we get greater command for social emotional development, it improves our relationships with others, it supports our academic achievement, our general mental health and well-being. Those things, sorry, this seems to be a duplicate. And I'm still having a bit of trouble with there we go. We learn these skills in our best parenting relationships through feedback that we get from our parents. Hopefully we're experiencing we call good enough parenting, consistency, parents tuning into feelings like you're frustrated, you seem to be angry right now, and really helping us to support learning to manage both positive and negative emotions. There are some possibilities that if we could connect the good work that we're seeing, especially in pre-K environments. Now, I wish we were seeing it more throughout the whole educational continuum, that we would continue to support this both in the home and in school settings. But this can be a particular challenge where there's trauma involved for families and for children. We know that trauma kind of gets us off track, as that train analogy just showed us, as it relates to child development. And the particular form I want to focus in on for just a moment is where there is certain kinds of issues in families that we would equate with what we call complex trauma. That's where there are relationship challenges between child and family, brought on by, struggling around those really big issues that we see a lot, both in child welfare and mental health, substance abuse, parental mental illness, and interpersonal family violence. And I know Spring was just talking about engaging families in general, and we sometimes see a particular challenge of engaging families to support the work in these particular areas. When these families, though, do come to the attention of clinicians to work with us around trauma-informed practices, we try to support some of the ways that they have been adversely affected. In families who are, focused around things like substance abuse issues, for example, trauma issues, community violence issues, the child is in fact doing what all children do and sending us some signals in that they need a particular thing from that parent, but that signal is not being received. And so they then begin to shut down, not demonstrate to their families what some of their needs are, and in many cases we see behavioral acting out. And that gets our attention, clearly. So usually, one of the first things we try and do, both in treatment settings and in school settings, is to learn what affect identification is. What is it that we are experiencing and feeling. But one of the things that we find is that for families where there has been involvement around trauma, is that those children are, because they're so often used to threats that they're experiencing in their family environment, in their home environment, they become what we call very hypervigilant. So they're constantly watching for things that might be going on out in their world and less attuned to feelings that they're experiencing. And so they have particular challenges with telling you, being in touch, first of all, with what they feel, with being able to predict how they're going to respond, how their feelings may change very quickly. So their ongoing experiences of threat and lack of safety then challenges their ability to read others and to read their own emotional cues. So tying together, social emotional competencies are working in this area, promoting self-awareness, managing our emotions and our behaviors, managing relationships and decision-making. But is it possible that sometimes, and I know this is true both for educators, for child welfare professionals, for a lot of different settings, where we start focusing so much on behavior that we miss that really underneath there are signals that a child is sending to us saying, I'm really scared. And because I got scared, I got deregulated, is what we would call it sometimes. And so we start really zeroing in on fixing the behavior rather than really dealing with those underlying things. I think we think a lot more about this for our little kids too than when we see these bigger behaviors as kids get a lot older. My hypothesis, others may disagree. I'd love to talk to you about that. Now, when we think about trauma treatment, our first thing we have to promote is safety. And I'm not just talking about physical safety like we sometimes think about in child welfare, maybe removing a child from an environment that poses some risk to them. I'm talking about psychological safety. And that's a much harder thing for us to think about because simply when my computer went down a minute ago, I did not feel psychologically safe and my stress level went up dramatically. Fortunately, I did not become completely deregulated and we got it back online. Little stressors through our day at school, out in the neighborhood, in the house, really can create some threats to safety. So even sometimes when it looks like kids have gotten skills, they've been able to demonstrate them sometimes, those threats then sometimes leave them unable to use skills that they have in fact begun to develop. So we then moved very quickly from establishing this sense of feeling psychologically safe, that this is an okay place to express emotion, to developing emotional regulation skills. And clinicians are working with this who are doing trauma treatment with little ones, and we do trauma treatment with babies even between the ages of birth through 3 in the project that I'm working with, and some of you know projects like that. So we start to begin to have parents better tune into what babies are experiencing, but we do it all the way through all ages. That establishing safety and then thinking about emotional regulation are skills that trauma clinicians are often working on. So safety has to be there first, and safety is often something that someone is experiencing subjectively or internally. And so sometimes I've seen files, and when I've done reviews in schools, where people have said, you know, this just happened. This, you know, horrific behavior just happened. There really was nothing before it. And really what happened is that something inside happened for that little one or that older child as well, that really triggered that behavior. And those are hard things for us to do some detective work about. So sometimes we see these behaviors that we think are really out of proportion for, you know, I just asked him to give me paper and something really bad happened. I know some of us have seen those things. So really what my goal is in this little brief time is to think about how can we potentially get on the same page when we think about both trauma-informed care and how that's happening both in schools and communities and homes. Because if a child was experiencing in an ideal world that I would like to create, both support at home where they're doing work around things like things Spring was talking about, and parent education and parent support in classes, but they also are working in cooperation with trauma-informed providers in the community, so that we're seeing the home, the school, and that clinician all working together in a coordinated way. That would be an ideal way to really take that child, making them feel safe across environments and having skills then reinforced across different environments. So what would that take? It would take us talking to one another. And when I've talked about this at various conference settings here locally, first of all, most clinicians would tell me, I've done this at school-based conferences, I've done this at clinical conferences, and people have said they really are not necessarily aware of each other's roles or that these possibilities even exist, which I think is a big step one. Often though, what they also tell me, and this may be changing because I'm not as focused in the school area at the present time, and I'm seeing great new opportunities that have been emerging, but it is possible that we're not seeing the SEL being reinforced at all ages and stages. So thanks, Cora, for the time. I got it. So our goal then is to really bring everybody together to support cues in the same way. And that collaboration would be really important to think about for these children that we're talking about. We're going to have to do some modifications in light of their unique experiences. It's really good to see the progress that we're making in the field of social emotional development. When I was first teaching my students about this, things like pyramid did not exist. That really looked at modifying the universal approaches that we started with SEL for special populations. And so that I'm really encouraged by, to really start to promote those cross-system conversations in more targeted ways. But I do think that that's something that we're going to have to do sometimes at very local levels when we specifically as teachers or as clinicians are involved in cases. And just my last point to make is that doing any of this kind of work around trauma practices and working around these tough cases can be very, very difficult. And so I'm obviously promoting a discussion here around teamwork, leadership sometimes, and that just sometimes means that true believer leading an effort to coordinate, get releases, talk to one another. But then at the bottom there, because I do work for an office called Wellbeing, I had to throw in some things that we need to do to take care of ourselves, achieving a work-life balance and taking good care of ourselves, especially on stressful days like today. So with that, I am handing off, and I believe Valerie's going to take it home for us.
Yep. Valerie, we're going to find your slides, and folks who are on the line also, if you have any questions from the first two presentations, please do not hesitate to put those questions in the chat box, and we'll make sure we write them down and pose them to panelists at the question and answer session at the end. Valerie, you're up.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Valerie Young. I am a single parent of two wonderful children, Virtuous and Sultan. As you can tell, I spelled my daughter's name Virtuous different. It's basically virtuous like a virtuous woman, so I was inspired to spell her name like such. Today I'll be talking to you guys about parent engagement strategies to support kindergarten readiness. So I have a story. My story is really straight to the point. I served in the military approximately 10 years. Within that 10 years, I came home. I had to adjust to society, and with that, it was a challenging part to do. I eventually sought help because I figured my mentality, it was some issues dealing with that. So I was diagnosed with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. So I came home and I was really messed up mentally, physically, and so forth. By the time I came home, which was in 2010, I knew I had adjustment issues, I had communication issues, and what have you. I eventually had my two children. With that, having two children, going back to Dr. Mann's slide, it was emotional and it was traumatizing. My children were traumatized by being in a single parent household, and it was something I wanted to learn how to connect with my children with. Because just because I suffer with PTSD, it doesn't mean my children have to be a victim of that. So the first slide basically is my children's name, and it's basically items in our neighborhood. I live in an urban society. I hail from East St. Louis. We have leaves and flowers and so forth. And what we did, we went on a nature walk. We went on a nature walk, and we found everything out the neighborhood, and we basically pasted it to paper. So what I wanted to do was show the children that because you live in an urban society, you don't have to basically succumb to that. It's beautiful things in the nature and in the neighborhood, what have you. I joined Head Start. I got in Head Start because I am a firm believer of homeschooling. I wanted to have that intimate relationship with my children. But like I said, I had post-traumatic stress disorder, and it was kind of challenging for me to communicate with them. Now, my children was always attached to me because by me being a single parent, you know, they had communication issues and behavior issues and so forth. So a person was going around in the neighborhood and she was handing out pamphlets. When she handed out pamphlets, I saw SIUE Head Start out of East St. Louis. I read over the pamphlet, I researched it because at the time I really did not know much about Head Start, but I heard about it word through mouth, but I didn't go in depth with understanding the program. Once I read about it, once I researched it, I eventually got involved in the program. The next slide is my son, Sultan. The boy, his name is Sultan, like I said, and Sultan in Arabic basically means king, and this is my daughter, Virtuous. This picture was taken when I found out that I was selected to be Parent of the Year in the Regions 5. With that being said, although my Head Start was for my children, it was also for me because Head Start offers so many different program options as far as comprehensive help, as far as everything that we can do to be involved. So please don't think Head Start is for the children, it's for the parent also. So it's basically, no one can tell you how to be a parent, but there are options in which we can guide each other. And in this instance, seeing that I had a mental issue, I was guided. My home visitor at the time, her name was Sandy Beaver. Now, my daughter, Virtuous, she was probably 6 years old when she joined the program. My son, however, was 1 year old. So she came into the home and the children were really kind of attached to my hip. So with that being said, she provided patience, and that's really wonderful to embrace the person wholeheartedly yet professionally. As Spring talked about, there are two options with Head Start. My program out of East St. Louis offers the center-based option where the children go out into a socialization program, or they offer the home-based option, which is when the home visitor comes into the home and interacts with you and the family. So that's what Sandy Beaver did for me and the children. She came into the home and she interacted with me and the children, which is powerful because 9 times out of 10, the children are really home with you most of the days, even when they leave. So she can use the home to facilitate the things that we can do as far as cognitive, counting, to have the children interact with the counting and reading and learning and so forth. This slide right here, as my children progressed in Head Start, I decided to join the Illinois Parent Ambassador team, basically. And this is our class from 2015 to 2016. And I love this picture. It's about all of us coming together in unity over one common goal. And that's basically preparing our children to advance to kindergarten. And with Head Start, you can do that. You know, we are basically vessels doing what we're supposed to do to provide services for our children. With the Illinois Parent Ambassador, what we do, we go out to our legislators. We try to inform them about Head Start and how powerful it is to the community and how we can keep it federally funded versus state funded. With federally funded, we'll have options to do everything we can to open more programs if need be, provide everything we can. Also, you know, we can go back to our policy council and we can tell them how we did on an upper level. We can go back to our parent committee and we can express to them how it's important to reach out to our legislative, because that's very important. This picture is me with my children at the park. We had a socialization. And as I talked about earlier, the socialization basically, if you're home-based, the socialization is basically to have home-based children go out to centers to socialize with children. So it allows the home-based children to have basically best of both worlds. So as I mentioned earlier, my kids were basically introverts. They basically cling to me. So with the help of Miss Sandy Beaver and her patience, she allowed the children to open up a little bit. She allowed them to, hey, it's okay to express yourselves. And that's what they needed, you know, and that's what I needed. She definitely provided resources for me with my services mentally with the post-traumatic stress disorder. She definitely provided services for me in regards to communicating and reaching out to my children. So what I'm saying in essence is the kids put forth their best effort and I put forth my best efforts. And that's basically what Head Start did for me. That's why I joined the policy council and I ran for president. That's why I joined the Illinois Parent Ambassador, because my children showed me, hey, mommy, I can go all in. What can you do? Can you show me that? So if they gave their all, I figured I would give my all and climb to the top and give the best of me as I could. This is my daughter, Virtuous. She basically is going to kindergarten this year. Her birthday was late. So with that being said, she kind of got held back. So she's still working on her reading, her language development and so forth. And she's doing a great job. And I love my baby girl. I can't express that. Like I said before Head Start, you know, she was very close-knitted. She was very tight towards me, but we embraced each other as a family. It was basically a learning effort, and I cannot express that. I basically have a story to tell real quick. So with my post-traumatic stress disorder, I have like angry outbursts, and you know, it's not really directed towards the children, but it's just I'm out there with my mentality, and I don't mean to be, and I'm very militant with my children. So I tend to yell at them, I tend to lash out at them, and it's not really them, it's just me trying to cope with my illness. So Miss Sandy, she took her time with me. She gave me researches. She gave me little practical exercises. I tried them, and I embraced it. One time we had a socialization event, and it was time to go. So I was like, you know, Virtuous Sultan, it's time to go. Let's go. And they were still playing, and I was like, oh my goodness. In my head, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to yell at them in public. But eventually, what I did, I got down on one knee and I spoke in a tone in which they understood. And I said, Virtuous Sultan, it's time to go, guys. And they basically ran to me. You know, they ran and got their coat. They ran to me and they was like, okay, mommy. And in the back, I could see Sandy was like, oh my God, she finally gets it. So with that story, I needed patience to deal with what I'm going through. I do receive help with the VA. I do receive help with the Head Start staff. They're great support systems. The Illinois ambassador, they are wonderful to me. This is them when they first started. They were at a socialization event. They were just having fun, eating and drinking and interacting with the kids, basically. These three pictures right here, this one is very special, the one where it say 50 years of opportunity. As we know, Lyndon B. Johnson basically started Head Start. This in the center is his granddaughter. And to meet her, it was a wonderful privilege. It was an honor. She gave us close, in-depth information about how her grandfather wanted to do the program, how he was eager about the program. She talked about Lady Bird, and it was very powerful to see her in Washington, D.C. This picture up here is basically us receiving our Illinois ambassador program. We certificate. We finished the program, and it was very powerful. Over here is basically all of us. We did a presentation in Springfield. In the blue shirt is Kay Strand, and this is Yasima. And we basically had a great time. We all came together. We provided teamwork in regards to what we were trying to do. And it was really heartfelt because our interests, in essence, were our children. This picture is us in D.C. with our senator in Illinois, Dick Durbin. We talked to him. We expressed about our views. We expressed what could be better. We expressed how it's pertinent to make Head Start federal. And he was just a great listener. And I was definitely appreciative of what he's done for his part in Head Start and the program. So we had a great time seeing him in D.C. This picture was based out of Tennessee, I believe, and what we wanted to focus on is if we put in $1 per child, it will basically help the program and fund what we're trying to do with their emotional and social development in regards to their cognitive behavior, their communication skills, and so forth. So this was a wonderful gesture to the NHSA, which is National Head Start Association. My son Sultan, he got out of Head Start, I believe, a year or two ago. He's now in first grade. He recently did a project, a science project, which was a lava lamp. And I was really proud of him. And throughout the reading and the teaching and the learning and so forth, he transitioned out of Head Start. And look at him now, guys. Look at him now. He's first place. I'm basically saying overall, Head Start works. And I thank you guys for all you have done. And, you know, without the children, without the parent support, without the staff support, I don't believe Head Start could be where they are now. Thank you guys very much. Oh, that's my daughter. She's smiling. She spelled her name, guys.
Thank you so much, Valerie, and to all the presenters as well. Those presentations were very informative, and we really appreciated the chats that have happened in the chat box as well. Please continue to enter in questions. I will pose some now to the panelists, but just because we're starting the Q&A does not mean that the time has run out for entering questions. Please continue to write in. So the first question I have is actually for Dr. Mann. Dr. Mann, I was wondering, there was a question submitted about what supports help teachers to recognize and support a child who may have experienced trauma, and how can teachers work with parents?
I love that. I just got done with a course in child trauma this summer, or for the spring semester, and a bunch of folks were going to be working in schools. And I always tell people that, if you don't already know this resource, on the website for the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, or NCTSN, I'm going to say that one more time, the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, there is a toolkit for educators. And it is a beautiful tool. It actually breaks things out by grade level, age level, and talks about both things that you might observe, but also things that you might do in the classroom. I always promote that, whether it's to educators directly, to go there directly and find materials for themselves. But certainly for those of us who also work with school professionals, I think it's a really good thing for us to bring together and work, and whether it's coaching with an individual or in teams. And I'm sorry, there was a second part to your question that I think I didn't answer.
Yeah, no problem. It was about parents. How can parents be supportive in this? So.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's important that parents know what we're trying to accomplish, and that, and I think Valerie has been a testimony to that today, a beautiful one. If we are truly on the same page, and that usually means what I sometimes call pitching it to people in a way that they can respond to. And we can't use the same, pitch to every single individual. We call it engagement. Obviously, Spring talked a lot about that and may have some other comments on it. But I do truly believe in having very, very individualized conversations where we actually help people to understand the benefits to their children. I think for our parents, bringing them in, whether it's getting feedback through the school or through our special programs, the fact that they need to hopefully through a course of conversations and or therapeutic approaches, buy into the fact that as we get more command for our emotions, the behavior shuts down. And I think there's a win in that for everybody. Teachers want to see the behavior improve. Parents want to see the behavior improve. So part of our message or our selling of whether it's a clinical intervention or classroom-based intervention we're trying to do has to be trying to help people understand what the benefit for them is going to be.
Thank you so much. So my next question is for Spring, actually. Spring, could you speak a little bit to how other organizations and community partners could help build parent engagement?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. How other community partners can help build family engagement?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. All of our work is school and centered based, so I think of it through that lens, and we talk and think a lot with pre-K leaders and teachers about ways in which they can connect with community organizations. So some specific examples would be, something like having a fair at school where representatives from organizations come and sort of make clear what services are immediately available in the neighborhood. But then we also try to help folks kind of flip that and think about what can the barber or the corner store owner do to help increase parents' awareness of pre-K or kindergarten registration. What are the ways in which sort of known leaders, religious leaders and otherwise in the community can help families feel empowered to go into the school building and ask for what they need, express concerns. So I think our sort of core is that it's about relationship building and sort of drawing in as many people as possible to help support that process. So I would say that any ways that community leaders and organizations can kind of make good use of their own strong relationships with families and support families in having strong relationships with teachers and educators.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. And other panelists, folks, Dr. Mann, Valerie, if you ever, there's a question that's posed to somebody and you wanted to jump in at the end, please feel free to do that as well. So my next question is actually for Valerie. And Valerie, we were wondering so we talked so much about parental engagement, and you've demonstrated so clearly your story of how engaged you've been with your children. And so do you have any thoughts about what we could do to connect other parents with the resources that you've benefited from? How would you expand how many parents have been as involved as you have?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry. You know, with me, I always keep my ear to the floor, and that's not literal, by the way. It's just, I tend to reach out, I tend to ask questions, I tend to be a little more open. And the thing about Head Start is some people don't even know that it helps special needs children. So some of the special needs children are out of Head Start because they do not realize that it's a platform for them. It's a door opening for them. And Head Start provides all of that. So one of the reasons Head Start can get out there is by word of mouth. You know, some people do not know that if we, I'm sorry, my daughter just interrupted me. Some people just do not know that if we say something by word of mouth, we can help someone else. You know, we'll be surprised how far our lips can go when it comes to engaging with other people. We can get out there with the flyers, because that's how I was reached, through outreach program. So so that's how I believe Head Start could get out there. In regards to engaging, there are so many books out there about parenting, but sometimes we have to go hands-on when it comes to teaching our child, because I always say there's nothing like a mother's love. Everyone have their own individual experience, and that's what I tend to focus on with Head Start.
Thanks so much, Valerie. I feel like outreach and sort of marketing, so to speak, and getting the word out is one of the things that we talk about. And I heard through all three of the presentations actually about that being a linchpin really for making sure that these programs are able to do what they set out to do. So for everyone, for each of you on the panel, and you're going to approach through slightly different lenses, but what strategies would you emphasize for teachers and students to support student self-regulation? So to sort of try to train the students and children to be able to self-regulate better, be able to have socialization practices that you talked about a bit, Valerie. What sort of strategies would you all recommend? And we can start with whoever speaks up first.
Can I go?
Yeah, please.
You know, with children, we cannot make them do anything. Let's just put that out there. At the end of the day, it's the child decision to make that conscious choice or just a choice per se. When we make choices, we find out whether it's a right choice or a wrong choice. When they make a choice and it's wrong, they'll see the repercussions of that, just as they see when they make another choice and it turns out to be a right choice. When it turns out to be the right choice, the parent should be, hey, good job, Virtuous, you did good. I love the way you spelled your name, or I love the way you shared with that young man or young woman. We want to force it with positive affirmations, if you will. That's what I do with my children in the home. I let them know, hey, you can do it. You are a king. You are a queen. Hey, this is easy. If you have to let them know, give them good food, not tangible food, of course, but good food that allows them to move forward in life. And I think with Head Start, my children has progressed so far. I am utterly proud of them. And when my son transitioned to kindergarten, he did that. I wasn't in the classroom with him. He remembered the Head Start teachings, just like my daughter. She would transition this year. She just didn't this past year, because of her birthday was late. But I'm really proud of my children, and I can't wait to see what they've learned from Head Start.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mann, hi, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I just love Valerie. And I think that her kids are benefiting so much from just that powerful reinforcement that she's giving, and approval and all those other good things. I talked earlier about the notion of identifying feelings, but something that we, I think all do, I remember when I was working in a therapeutic school environment, and how carefully we had to plan for transitions and changes in times when some of our older and younger kids are challenged by their frustration tolerance or the lack thereof. I think that we do a good job sometimes, hopefully, we do a good job of planning for places where we see patterns of challenge for children. What I think we could probably do a better job of is not just using all of our good behavioral reinforcements, but literally coming back to having our children tune into those feelings. Did you feel worried? Did you feel worried that you couldn't do it? Did you feel worried about what would happen next? Getting in touch with those feelings and being able, again, to express those emotionally, it at least we believe it diminishes the need to show up as a behavioral problem or, you know, poor frustration, therefore bad behavior. So I think the ways planning, helping children to tune in, so that's not just us, you know, doing the reminders, but having them to be increasingly gain control over understanding what environments are they most challenged by, what times of day, what, you know, changes, so that they then are better able to know this is where I really need to use these new skills I'm learning. So the more explicit we are about breaking these things down, I think the better success we're going to have.
I really agree with what both Kim and Valerie said. I'll just add briefly that our mantra is about creating safe, nurturing, and predictable environments in which children have opportunities for doing the kind of learning that Valerie was naming. And she actually modeled and called out a couple of the specific strategies that we teach that are based on several decades now of really strong evidence about what adults can do to help support children in learning a variety of skills. And so we focus on applying those practices to support kids' social emotional skills. And so those are things like reinforcing when kids do well, getting down on one knee, making eye contact, being really clear about what your expectations are for kids. And then when things don't go well, that kids experience the natural consequence of that choice, or that parents deliver a meaningful consequence. We also really emphasize self-care. Just wanted to pick that thread back up from Kim earlier of the importance of parents and teachers really taking care of themselves as they're doing this challenging work.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so that was a great question for all three of you to respond to and for us to wrap up with. And thank you again to the three of you, not only for this discussion, but for your presentations as well. I know I learned a lot, and the response that we're getting in the chat box indicates that I was not alone. So thank you all so much. Wanted to just briefly show that there are ways to follow us on Twitter for the latest update on events and publications. If this was interesting and you're interested in similar materials, please don't hesitate to visit any of these sites that are up on your screen now. And then Ms. Sarah, which is the Research Alliance that I spoke about at the beginning, all the contact information for the leads for that alliance are on your screen. So again, I'm Megan Norris. I've been the moderator for this webinar, and Jill and Heather are my sort of compadres on this. So please do not hesitate to reach out to any of the three of us with any questions or follow-up information. I know Spring just posted a link to reach some of the information that she talked about. I know there was a question too about contact information for Parent Corps, so we're happy to follow up about that if that's of interest. Please don't hesitate to put it in email. And thank you so much for taking time out of your lunch hour, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's still showing. We've got, yeah.
Goodbye, everyone. It was great to meet you and be with you on the panel today. Take good care.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for you as well.
Valerie, thanks everyone.
Valerie, thank you.